Hi, I'm Kerry Woods and it's lovely to be with you again today. In today's video I'm going to have a look at the next card in the Major Arcana series that I'm doing, just having a little bit of a look at the meaning and some of the symbolism that jumps out at me. So this is the number 4 Major Arcana and it is the Emperor. And so when I look at the Emperor card, and I encourage you maybe to pause this video and just have a look and see what jumps out at you. But when I look at this card, I'm immediately drawn to the imagery that talks to me about authority, about rules and laws in society. You know, it's an image of a king, and so that's what jumps out at me. Whether it be good or bad, you know, it's about that somebody wanting to enforce rules and laws, perhaps control an organization. The Emperor is also known as a ruler, of course, as the imagery of a king. It's about also known as the architect or the builder. The Emperor is dynamic and logic. It's about logic, things that are logical. He sort of reminds us that part of our life journey is not only to absorb those rules and laws, but to look at traditions and beliefs, but to go perhaps beyond that and find our own personal code of conduct. So it's like on the surface, it's truly about those rules and laws and traditions and beliefs that we are conditioned and are engaged in, particularly in childhood. But as we grow and develop as adults, it's around taking those on board and really owning them for ourselves and developing our own personal code of conduct. The imagery, of course, as I said, is of a king figure, and you might notice he's sitting on a grey throne, stone throne. He's draped in red and red robes, and he's wearing some armor. Okay, it's a look of an older man. You know, he's got this long flowing beard, which I think may want to represent that there's sort of wisdom with the ages. He looks quite stern, so I think of him as perhaps not somebody who has a lot of passion, but is quite stern around rules and regulations, and about the importance of power and strength and leadership. And he is the opposite, therefore, to the Emperor. So it's that opposite energy, that energy of being in authority, about enforcing rules and regulations. I look at this card and I think that leadership is really important, and we need leadership in our lives. So when the Emperor comes up, he's talking about that importance of commanding respect, about looking at life with, you know, the importance of leadership, and about there are periods in our life when we need to be dominant and strong, and you really rely on and use our intellectual reasoning. So that's that logical part of our being. It's about sort of structured thought. It's about honouring and respecting tradition. And if we didn't have rules and regulations and tradition in our lives, we'd have quite a lot of anarchy. It's around the willingness to defend our values and our beliefs, and particularly as we develop our own personal code of conduct, is really coming from a place of honouring that and respecting that, and showing the importance of that in our lives and to others. He can also, though, represent perhaps a time when we might be a little too dogmatic or maybe a bit insensitive, because, you know, feelings aren't something that he's really wanting to portray. And so you might find that whether this card is coming up as you representing you yourself, or perhaps representing someone else around you, it's around, is that a balanced approach, or is somebody being overly dogmatic or domineering, perhaps, you know, misusing that power. You know, I think that the power is really important in us, and within a person's life we need to have that and we need to own that, but we also need to be important that we're not dominating others or feeling someone is dominating us, so putting ourselves into a position where we're feeling disempowered by another. Or ourselves feeling disempowered because we're so focused on rules and regulations and not realizing that there needs to be a balance in life. You know, it's like this card can represent that sort of dictatorship and boundaries that can limit us. So it's about looking at it as using it for that which we need and having that balance, sort of balancing that Empress energy that we've already talked about. But, you know, having a logical approach and using our intellectual awareness and capacities is a really important part of also growing and developing in this world. It could represent somebody who's ego-driven, perhaps being a bit insensitive or emotionally cold. So it's important, if this is representing us in a reading, thinking about, well, is that where we want to be coming from, or do we need to soften that? It could be he doesn't really like someone. The Emperor isn't responsive or welcoming of somebody who maybe is questioning authority, because he wants rules and regulations to be always followed, even if he isn't following them. So that's the sort of energy that's coming from this card. So it's good to be aware when it comes up about, are we being a bit that way? Are we sort of demanding other people follow rules and regulations that we aren't? Or are we being a bit too stuck in not seeing that life is about flow? It could also be a situation where we're dealing with government, so an external area of authority or structure, or perhaps even working with somebody that, like a doctor or a government officer or a lawyer, where we want them to have that role, but it's about being aware that we don't give away our power, that we're aware that they're holding that position of authority and of power in a particular situation, but we don't want to disempower ourselves and give away our power. It's about that balance. He also can represent a time of stability and order, which at certain periods of our life is really important. Some of the other imagery that I like to sort of pay attention to is the fact that so much red and orange, and particularly the background, you know, it's all orange, and that there's sort of this harshness of the silver, of course, of the armor, which can be really important at times when we need to have boundaries and be defended, but it also can be a limitation. Also the sternness of the white seat that he's sitting on, and of course in his crown there's the sort of imagery of a ram's head, and also over here, which is important because the Emperor represents Aries in astrology. And so is also there, and is ruled, you know, being Aries is ruled by Mars, and so that Mars energy, if you follow astrology. There's a little bit of water in the picture, and I think that's important. It's not saying he's, you know, that he's void of, you know, like none of us are, that we always have a mix of emotions and balance, but it's very small and it's just a small trickle. So he's not real comfortable with emotion and passion and spontaneity, and that's why he's a real balance to the Empress. He's holding an orb and a scepter, and you can see the orb is over here and the scepter is here. And the scepter represents, you know, traditionally, remember when we think about when these cards were made, was very much about how the king or those in authority really had control over life and health and happiness. So it represents that the king had good fortune and you know, a long life and that sort of thing. So that's why that was all there, you know. And the armor also represents a sort of, he's of nobility, and he's fighting justice and principles and that sort of thing, you know. So that's sort of what I see. It's really important when you look at this card that you see where does it fit within a reading, who is it representing, and the person you're reading for, how they relate to that card and what do they see in it. So I hope you've taken some time to look to see what you see in the card, and I look forward to catching you in my next video. Have a wonderful day, and if you'd like to find me and know more about me, you can look me up on my website, which is www.kirawoods.com, or find me on Facebook. Take care, bye.